So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the different miscellaneous products that we offer that normally complements a turf installation job. There's a couple different things that we're going to get into here, so I'm just going to dive right into it. So this is going to be your weed barrier. This is what's going to get put down once the base gets laid, then we put a weed barrier down. The purpose of the weed barrier is sometimes, well, a lot of times you can essentially still have some dirt that gets built on, say underneath the road base, let's say, for example, there's going to be some weeds that are going to make their way through. If you do not include this, there's a very good chance that there's going to have weeds that pop through. They're going to come through the drain holes. The turf essentially itself has these little holes for drainage. This one's has a lot more holes because it's a thicker product, a premium product. A lot of times weeds grow through that, so it's very recommended to do a weed barrier. Yes, you're going to have some customers, maybe even competitors, that are going to get in your customer's ear and say, "Oh, it's going to smell like urine." Yes, if you don't treat it, you will get a urine smell if there's several dogs. But I personally recommend the customer always does weed barrier. If they have a lot of dogs, water the area down pretty consistently. The purpose of the water is essentially to push any of the urine through. There are products that you can apply, deodorizers to the turf. Basically, when you're spraying the turf, it hooks up to the hose. I normally say every few weeks, if you're in an area where it rains a lot, like Georgia, you really don't need to spray it off too often because it'll get plenty of rain. If you want to avoid callbacks, I would 100% always include it. We don't charge any extra for it. Next product is going to be the gopher wire. Here in Georgia, we don't really get too many gophers, at least not to my knowledge. We normally get a lot of moles. Say we get to a customer's house and they don't mention it, but say you notice a few areas in the yard where there's some pretty decent dips. Just look out for that. Ask the customer, "Hey, have you had any issues with moles before?" Like, "Oh yeah, I have. That's probably why we want to get turf." Years go up, include gopher wire. If you don't, and they have the moles moving under their yard within a few weeks, say a few months, a few years, there's going to be some shifting and the turf is going to sink. You include the gopher wire, it eliminates that issue. There's still a very, very small chance that deep underneath the road base they can get in there, but it's not really a huge concern with the gopher wire. It essentially eliminates that concern. Next thing we're going to get into is the bender board landscape edging. This is going to be the most reasonable price landscape edging, going to be the most common one. It's similar to like a TimberTech or Trex material, like a composite wood. It's a lot more flexible than one of those products. The purpose of that, basically the outside edge of the turf. If there's a scenario where the turf is not meeting up to a hard surface, such as a masonry, like a fence, or a masonry surface such as concrete, stepping stones, pavers, and it's just open, always include the bender board. You can give them the optional cost, but I would just go ahead and include it if you want the project to hold up. It's not outrageously expensive. If they want something a little bit more premium, you can go with the metal edging. I'm not the biggest fan of the metal edging. I mean, it's definitely got a certain look to it. In my opinion, doesn't come off as more higher end. It is a little bit more dangerous given that it's a pretty big lip that comes out of the ground. So that's something we can offer. It's significantly more expensive than the bender board, but I would only offer this if a customer requests it. Next thing we're going to get into is the different services we provide that complement the turf outside of the actual turf installation. So a very common one, say they want to do turf over here and then they want to have a little area in the yard where there's rocks. We can absolutely price that out. All of that's in ArcSite. There are plenty of projects where, it absolutely makes sense to include it. It really depends on what the customer is looking for, but it's absolutely a service we provide. Another service we provide would be stepping stones, whether that's the pre-ordered ones, whether we pour individual concrete pads. All of this is stuff that oftentimes complements artificial grass insulation. So these are all things that we can offer. These are all things that are built into ArcSite. Now, when we get into specific pavers, like if they're like, "Hey, we want to do an Angelus paver," this one we saw in the catalog, that's going to be custom pricing. Get in touch with me, get in touch with your sales manager. We can get pricing for you on it. Typically, you can also reach out to the project manager too, and he can try to get you some pricing. The reason you have to reach out and get pricing is because pricing often fluctuates with pavers. They go up, they go down, typically always up. So we want to make sure we're pricing it out accurately so we don't really put those in the system. Next, it's going to be retaining walls. This is going to be very, very common here in Georgia, where there's some projects where it's almost mandatory to do a retaining wall. I always price those out as optional, because if you have, say, two other companies that come out and you come out and you recommend a retaining wall, but none of the other companies did. When they're looking at the quote side by side, obviously the scope of work isn't aligned. But when they see that price, oh, you guys are $12,000 more, $8,000 more. A lot of times they don't even take that into account, something that you suggested. So if it's a project that almost needs a retaining wall, we'll go over that in another video, how to do this, but I always recommend pricing it out as an optional line item, meaning giving them the opportunity to decide if they want to do it. You leave it out of the total price. There's a checkbox in Java where they can say, check, I want to do the retaining wall. That way, if there is an issue down the road with the settling and whatnot, and say the turf gets ruined, and they call us, we have that ammunition that says, hey, we priced this out 2 years ago for you. You weren't interested in including it. The reason we had priced it out is because this is always a possibility of this happening. So unfortunately, doesn't cover it under the warranty, but we're more than happy to price out a separate project to get this done for you. That would be an example. Another thing that we can price out would be a French drain system. Going to be fairly popular here in Georgia because we do have a lot of heavy rain. Now with artificial grass, let's say in Georgia, for example, or really anywhere in the South where there's the red clay, the clay holds a lot of water. When we do some demoing, when we put the road base in, even switching from clay to artificial grass without doing any additional drainage, it's going to drain really well with a new rock in there. If it's an area that they know, like everything kind of forms in that area, we can price out a French drain system. It's all at the product and ARC site. If you need help with that, give us a call and we can walk you through it. Another thing we can offer, so we can basically run a line from their existing sprinkler heads to their garden. So say there's sprinklers in the area, they don't want to use those anymore, but they do still want water for the bed that's behind the turf. In the system, we can price out a drip line for them. So that's all an ARC site. Couple different things, playground padding. This is another popular one if you're getting any commercial projects. Basically, it's installed underneath the turf. There's a couple different size options in ARC site. That's all in there. I would pretty much only recommend that if a customer specifically asks for it. Another turf product you're going to price out fairly often is an agility turf. The scenarios where this makes sense is if it's a gym, say it's some sort of indoor facility, and you see turf, it's a lot more common nowadays. Typically, there's going to be a turf with a padding built into it, which is one of the products we offer. Say there's a scenario where the customer wants like landscape turf inside. Say they want this specific product in their gym. Not a very common thing, but if they do, we can absolutely do that because we can have the padding basically glued underneath, all of it secured. So we can absolutely make that happen. Same thing goes for doing the turf inside. You don't have to always do the padding. It's recommended depending on the use of it. This is one of those things you're going to have to tailor it based off what the customer's looking for and the outcome they're going for here. That brings me to my next point with the glue down. In regard to the indoor turf products, those get glued down. It's a specific turf adhesive that gets put down. Now, normally we're going to use a product called Turf Claw. Each market's different. It's a very, very strong adhesive that goes onto the concrete or any masonry surface. Whenever we're doing a glue down, like an indoor area, make sure it's on a masonry surface. Because if they say they have vinyl flooring or hardwood flooring, and they want to glue turf down on top of it, we can, but we're going to have to put disclaimers that when they go to remove the turf in a few years, that flooring is going to be ruined. It's going to rip everything up. It's a very, very strong adhesive. So we do a decent amount of glue down projects, whether it is a gym, whether it's a golf simulator, different products we can use, and that all can be adhered down with the Turf Claw glue or whatever adhesive that we're using in your market. And then they just get secured, the turf gets stretched out. There is an option in ARC site, which I'll show you in another video, where you can, if it's a glue down specific product you add and it deducts a certain cost for what the road base would have added to it. So they save a little bit of money doing it indoors because obviously there's less prep. So this video covered pretty much the main miscellaneous products that we're going to run into that complement the turf projects. Just know if there's anything that comes up that you're not comfortable talking about, you have no knowledge on, whatever that may be, just tell the customer, hey, I'd love to get you pricing on that. When we're wrapped up here, I'm going to give my manager a call. Or you can even say, hey, I'm going to give my head project manager a call, see what kind of custom pricing I can come up for you on that. Or again, if it's something that you can't intelligently talk about, you don't have to necessarily say that, but you can say, hey, before I get you an answer on that, I do want to confirm that with my team just to make sure I'm setting the right expectations here. That's an example. So again, if there's something that you don't know and you don't want to try to guess, I wouldn't guess trying to talk about it. You can always call us. We can help you out with that. There's always going to be things that are going to come up that a customer is going to request. If you say you hadn't priced before, if you're new to this, just give us a call. It's going to be custom price. It's not in the system, something you're not familiar with. We can definitely get it priced out for them. I typically tell customers we can do whatever they want as long as they're willing to pay for it to a degree. So we can make it happen. Just depends on what kind of cost we can come up with it for it.